The stars looked cold and distant through the bridge windows of the Crimson Fang. Zexthera stood 9 feet tall, dark green scales catching the red light from the ship's control panels. Her yellow eyes scanned the empty space ahead, searching for prey. The massive dreadnought moved silently through the void, its weapons ready to strike. "Commander," called her second-in-command, Kravex. His voice was rough and deep, like grinding stone. "We have found the human colony. It is weak and undefended." Zexthora turned her massive head. Her sharp teeth showed in what might have been a smile on a human face, but looked terrifying on her reptilian features. "Good. How many humans?" 300, perhaps more. "They have mining equipment but no real weapons. Their defenses are pathetic, as expected." Zexthera flexed her claws. Each one was as long as a human finger and sharp enough to cut through metal. "The Vorthok Empire grows stronger with each world we take. These soft creatures will learn to fear us, just like all the others." She had been hunting for 40 years. 17 star systems had fallen to her forces. The galaxy knew the name Zexthera and trembled. Other species whispered stories of the great predator who showed no mercy. She was proud of that fear. Crimson Fang was her pride. 2 miles long and bristling with weapons, it could destroy entire fleets. Her crew of 500 Vorthok warriors lived only to fight and conquer. They believed, as she did, that strength was the only thing that mattered in the universe. "Deploy the fighters," she ordered. "Surround their colony, and I want them to see death coming before it arrives." Far from the approaching danger, Captain Jake Murphy sat in the small bridge of the research vessel, New Horizon. He was reading reports on his tablet when the emergency signal came through the speakers. "Mayday! Mayday! This is Kepler Colony calling any ship in range. We are under attack. Unknown vessels approaching. Please help us. They're huge," and the signal cut to static. Jake jumped to his feet. He was 35 years old, average height for a human, with brown hair and tired eyes. He'd been exploring space for 10 years, always looking for new worlds and new discoveries. Violence was not something he sought, but he could not ignore a call for help. "Lisa," he called to his sister. "Did you hear that?" Lisa Murphy came. Running from the engine room, she was 2 years younger than Jake, with the same brown hair but sharper eyes. Grease stained her work clothes. She was the best engineer he knew, and the only person he trusted completely. "I heard it," she said, wiping her hands on a cloth. "Jake, that sounded bad, really bad. We have to help them with what?" "We're a research ship. We have 6 people and no weapons. If someone is attacking a whole colony, what can we do?" Jake looked at the star charts. KEPLER 442b was only 3 hours away at full speed. He thought about the 300 people there. Families. Children. People who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars. "We can't just leave them," he said. Lisa sighed. She knew that look on her brother's face. It was the same expression he wore when he solved impossible problems back on Earth, stubborn and determined. "The reports from other systems," she said. "Quietly, ships disappearing, colonies going silent. Some people say it's a species called the Vorthok. They say these aliens are killers, pure predators. All the more reason to help. Listen to me. If these are the same aliens, they don't negotiate. They don't show mercy. They just take what they want and destroy everything else." Jake activated the ship's communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We're changing course to respond to a distress call. I know this isn't what we signed up for, but people need help. Anyone who objects can speak now." The ship was quiet for a moment. Then Danny Clark, their pilot, spoke over the comm. "I'm with you, Captain." "Same here," said Helen Torres, their science officer. One by one, the crew agreed. Jake felt proud. Of them, these were good people. Scientists and explorers, not soldiers. But they would not abandon others in need. "Set course for Kepler 4 for 2B, Jake ordered. Maximum speed." It was a small ship, built for research, not combat. Against the massive Vorthok dreadnought, it was like a mouse facing a dragon. 3. Hours later, they dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Kepler 442b. What they saw made Jake's heart sink. The colony was under attack. Huge alien ships surrounded the planet like metal predators. Smaller fighters swooped down toward the surface, firing energy beams at the settlement. Explosions lit up the colony's protective dome. "My God," whispered Helen. "Look at the size of that ship." Crimson Fang hung in space like a mountain of metal and death. Its red lights pulsed like a heartbeat. Weapon ports lined its hull, and fighter craft swarmed around it like angry insects. "Jake," Lisa said, her voice tight with fear, "we need to leave now, before they see us." But it was too late. Alarms began blaring throughout their ship. 3 Vorthok fighters were already moving toward them, their weapons charging with deadly light. "All stop," Jake ordered, though he knew it would not help. Their ship was too slow to run and too weak to fight. The fighters surrounded the new horizon quickly. Energy beams struck their engines, disabling them without destroying the ship. Jake realized the aliens wanted them alive. Within minutes, a boarding pod attached to their hull. The sound of cutting tools echoed through the ship as the aliens burned through their airlock. "Stay calm," Jake told his crew. "Do exactly what they say. Maybe we can survive this." Airlock exploded inward. Vorthok warriors poured through the breach. They were huge, towering over the humans. Their scales gleamed in the ship's lights, and their claws reflected like knives. The smell of sulfur and metal followed them. Jake had seen pictures of Vorthok before, but facing them in person was different. These were not just aliens. They were predators in every sense of the word. Evolution had shaped them for hunting and killing. The lead warrior grabbed Jake by the shoulder. His claws dug through his shirt but did not quite pierce his skin. "You will come with us, human. Your ship is now property of the Vorthok Empire." Jake looked into the alien's yellow eyes and saw no mercy there, only hunger and contempt. To this creature, humans were nothing more than prey as they were marched. Onto the alien ship, Jake caught a glimpse of the colony below. Smoke rose from dozens of buildings. People were being herded into groups by Vorthok soldiers. Some were crying. Others stood in shocked silence. Jake had come to help them. Instead, he had only added to their number of prisoners. But as he was pushed into a dark holding cell with his crew, he made a silent promise. Somehow, he would find a way to save these people. All of them. The holding cell was dark and cold. Jake sat with his crew against one metal wall, while colonists from Kepler 442b filled the rest of the space. Children cried softly in their parents' arms. Adults whispered prayers or stared at nothing with empty eyes. Jake watched the guards through the energy barrier that trapped them. The Vorthok soldiers were different from any enemy he had studied. They did not patrol like human guards. Instead, they stood perfectly still like statues made of scales and muscle. Their yellow eyes never stopped moving, always searching for threats. "They're pack hunters," whispered Helen Torres, the science officer. She had been studying alien behavior for years. "Look how they position themselves, always watching each other's blind spots." "Pack hunters need a leader," Jake said. Quietly, "There has to be someone giving orders." Lisa moved closer to her brother. "Jake, what are you thinking?" "I know that look." Before Jake could answer, heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor. Guards straightened and stepped aside. A massive Vorthok entered the holding area. This one was different from the others. Larger. More decorated. Scars covered its arms and face like badges of honor. "I'm Krovax," the alien announced. Its voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Second to Commander Zexthera. You will be processed now." 2 guards opened the energy barrier. They began pulling colonists out one by one, separating them into groups. Jake watched the pattern and felt sick. The young and strong went to the left, as the old and weak went to the right. Ben Carter, an elderly man who had helped build the colony, was shoved toward the right group. He stumbled and fell. When he tried to get up, a guard kicked him down again. "Please," Ben said, his voice shaking. "I can still work. I'm not useless." The guard raised its clawed hand to strike. Jake could not watch anymore. "Stop," the word came, out louder than Jake intended. Every Vorthok in the room turned to look at him. The guard froze with its claw in the air. Silence filled the space like a heavy weight. Jake stood up slowly. His heart pounded, but he kept his voice steady. "Leave him alone." Krovax tilted its massive head. "The human speaks." "How interesting." It walked closer to Jake. "Do you think your words have power here, small creature?" "I think beating old men makes you look weak." The silence became deeper. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Lisa grabbed his arm, trying to pull him back, but he did not move. Krovax bared its teeth. Each one was as long as Jake's thumb and sharp as a knife. "Weak? You dare call the Vorthok weak? I call beating defenseless people weak." And he cowered. "Can hurt someone who cannot fight back." The alien's eyes flashed with anger. It raised one massive claw toward Jake's face. Jake could smell its breath, hot and metallic, but he did not step back. He looked directly into those yellow eyes without blinking. "You will learn respect, human. Pain teaches respect. Respect is earned, not beaten into people." Krovax paused. Something in Jake's tone made it hesitate. The human showed no fear. No begging. No cowering. This was not how prey species behaved. "You interest me," Krovax said finally. "Tell me, human, why do you protect the weak ones? They cannot help you. They have no value." Jake thought about how to answer. Aliens understood only strength and dominance. But maybe he could use that. "Where I come from, strength means protecting others. Anyone can destroy. It takes real power to build and defend." "Build," Krovax laughed, a harsh sound like breaking glass. "Prey builds nests. Predators take what they need. Then what happens when there's nothing left to take?" The question hung in the air. Krovax had never considered it before. The Vorthok took what they wanted and moved on. They never thought about what came after. Young Amy Price, a 10-year-old girl from the colony, had been listening. She stepped forward, her small hand taking Jake's larger one. "Mr. Jake," she said in her clear child's voice, "are these the monsters from the stories?" "No, Amy," Jake said, still looking at Krovax. "These are just people who forgot how to be anything other than afraid." "Afraid?" Krovax snarled. "The Vorthok fear nothing. Then why do you only fight those weaker than you? Oh, why not test your strength against equals?" More footsteps echoed in the corridor. These were heavier than before. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Even Krovax stepped back and lowered its head in submission. Zexthora entered the holding area. Jake had thought Krovax was large, but the Vorthok commander was enormous. 9 feet of pure predator, with scales that seemed to absorb light. Battle scars covered her arms and face. Her yellow eyes were like burning stars, cold and ancient. She looked at the scene before her, the separated colonists, second in command. Facing a small human? The child holding the human's hand without fear. What is this disruption? Her voice was quieter than Krovax's, but somehow more terrifying. Commander Krovax said, "The human challenges our methods. It claims we are weak." Zexthera's gaze fixed on Jake. She had conquered 17 star systems. She had faced the warriors of a dozen species and broken them all. But this human looked at her the same way he had looked at Krovax. Without fear, without submission. "You are the one causing trouble," she said. "I'm the one asking questions," Jake replied. "And what questions do you ask, little human?" Jake felt the weight of every eye in the room. His crew, the colonists, the Vorthok guards, all watching. Amy squeezed his hand tighter. "I ask why the galaxy's strongest predator needs to prey on families trying to grow food. I ask why victory against the defenseless brings honor. I ask what happens when there's no one left to conquer." Zexthera stepped closer. Her claws scraped against the metal floor. "You think you understand strength, human?" "I think I understand the difference between strength and fear." "Fear." The word came out as a hiss. "You attack colonies, not armies. You take slaves, not prisoners of war. You destroy instead of building. That sounds like fear to me. Fear that if you stopped destroying, you might have to create something." Instead, the holding area was completely silent. Even the children had stopped crying. Zexthara stared at Jake for a long moment. No one had ever spoken to her this way. 40 years of conquest, every enemy had begged or threatened or tried to bargain. None had simply stood their ground and asked her to think. You wish to test. Your theory about strength? She asked finally. I wish to prove that there are different kinds of strength, and that yours might not be the strongest after all. Sixtera's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile. Her teeth gleamed in the dim light. Very well, human. You will have your chance. Tomorrow, we will test your strength against mine. When you fail, your people will serve as an example to all who think prey can challenge predators. She turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing in the silence. Krovax followed, leaving the guards to watch over the prisoners. Lisa grabbed Jake's arm. What have you done? She whispered. Jake looked down at Amy, who was still holding his hand. The little girl smiled up at him with complete trust. I bought us time, he said quietly. And maybe, just maybe, I found a way to save everyone. But, as he looked around at the frightened faces of the colonists, Jake wondered if he had just signed all their death warrants instead. The arena was a massive chamber in the heart of the Crimson Fang. Curved walls rose high above, lined with viewing platforms where Vorthok warriors watched with hungry eyes. The floor was polished metal that reflected the red lights hanging from the ceiling. Jake stood in the center, feeling very small. His crew and the colonists filled one section of the viewing area, guarded by Vorthok soldiers. He could see Lisa's worried face among them. Amy Price waved at him with a sad smile. Zexthara entered from the opposite side. She wore her full battle armor now, black scales over metal plates. Her weapons gleamed at her sides. The warriors in the stands roared their approval, a sound like rolling thunder. Human Zexthara called across the arena, spoke of different kinds of strength. Today you will prove your words or die trying. Jake's mouth felt dry. Kind of test? Not combat. Even I know that would be pointless. She gestured to a control panel that rose from the floor. This is our war simulator. Every Vorthok officer must pass this test to earn their rank. You will command a fleet in battle against impossible odds. A hologram appeared above them, showing starships floating in space. Jake could see his fleet, 12 small ships facing an enemy force 3 times larger. The display showed weapon strengths, shield power, and crew numbers. Everything looked hopeless. The test is simple, Zexthara continued. Lead your forces with honor. Show the strength of your leadership when facing certain death, every Vorthok. Commander has taken this test. All have failed, but they failed with glory. Failed? The scenario cannot be won. It is designed to test how well you can lead warriors to their deaths, how much honor you can show in defeat. Jake studied the hologram. The enemy ships were bigger and stronger. His tiny fleet would be destroyed in minutes if he fought directly. But as he watched the display, patterns began to form in his mind. Possibilities that the Vorthok might never consider. What happens if I win? He asked. Zexthara laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the arena. Gosh, if you win the impossible. Test human, then. Perhaps your people will earn a quick death instead of slavery. Jake nodded and placed his hands on the control panel. The simulation began immediately. The enemy fleet moved forward in perfect formation, just as he expected. Vorthok tactics were always the same: direct assault with overwhelming force. Jake split his small fleet into 3 groups and sent them in different directions. What is he doing? Growled Krovax from the viewing platform. Divides his forces? That is madness. Zexthara watched with interest. Most commanders tried to keep their ships together for one final glorious charge. This human was doing something completely different. Jake's first group of ships flew directly at the enemy, but at the last moment they turned and fled. The enemy pursued, just as Jake hoped they would. Their tight formations spread out as faster ships pulled ahead of slower ones. His second group attacked the enemy's left flank, and also retreated when the enemy turned to face them. Again, the enemy formation stretched and weakened as they gave. Chase, coward! Shouted a Vorthok warrior from the stands. He runs from battle, but Jake was not running. He was thinking. While the enemy chased his first 2 groups, his third group circled around behind them. When the enemy was completely scattered, Jake struck. His smallest ships attacked the enemy supply vessels that had been left unguarded. Without supplies, the larger warships began to lose power. Their weapons grew weaker, shields failed. Then Jake did something that made every Vorthok in the arena gasp in shock. Instead of destroying the helpless enemy ships, he offered them surrender terms. "What are you doing?" Zexthera demanded. "Winning," Jake said simply. The enemy commander in the simulation accepted surrender rather than watch his crews die uselessly. Jake had not only survived the impossible test, he had won it with barely any losses on either side. The arena fell completely silent. No Vorthok had ever seen anything like this. Victory without massive bloodshed was not something they understood. "Simulation is broken," Krovax announced. "No one can win that scenario." "Run it again," Zexthera ordered. They ran the test 3 more times with different starting positions. Each time, Jake won through tactics that avoided direct confrontation. He used the enemy's own aggression against them, saved lives instead of throwing them away. He turned enemies into prisoners instead of corpses. After the 4th victory, Zexthera stepped down into the arena. Her yellow eyes were wide with something Jake had never seen in them before. Confusion. She asked, "How is this possible?" Jake looked up at the colonists watching from above. Ben Carter gave him an encouraging nod. Amy Price was clapping her hands with joy. "Your test assumes that death is honorable," Jake said. "Where I come from, keeping people alive is more honorable than letting them die gloriously. But warriors must be willing to die in battle. Warriors should be willing to die to protect others, not to prove how brave they are. There's a difference." Zexthera began pacing around Jake like a predator circling prey, but there was something different about her movement now. Less threatening, more curious. "Show me," she demanded. "Take the test yourself." "What? You claim your way is better. You claim we are wrong about strength and honor. Prove it." "Take the same test." Jake stepped back from the control panel. Zexthera took his place. A hologram reset, showing the same impossible scenario. It's 12 small ships against 36 larger ones. Zexthera chose the traditional Vorthok approach. She formed her ships into a tight spear formation and charged directly at the enemy center. Her warriors fought with incredible bravery, taking 3 enemy ships with them as they died. But within 10 minutes, her entire fleet was destroyed. It was a glorious defeat, exactly what the test was designed to measure. The Vorthok in the stands cheered for their commander's courage. "You see," Zexthera said, breathing hard from the emotional intensity of the simulation. "This is how warriors die. With honor." Jake looked at the display showing all 12 of her ships destroyed. "You lost your entire fleet. But we died as heroes. You died as corpses. Dead heroes cannot protect anyone." "What do you mean?" Jake gestured to the colonists above them. "Every one of those people has a family somewhere. Children waiting for. Parents to come home. If I die here today, my sister Lisa will be alone. You destroy this colony, those families will never see their loved ones again." He walked closer to Zexthera, no longer afraid of her massive form. "In your simulation, I saved not just my ships, but the enemy ships too. Their crews go home to their families. Their children still have parents. That is victory." Zexthera stared at him. "You think about the enemy's families? Think about everyone's families. That is what makes us different." The arena was silent again. Zexthera looked up at her warriors, then at the human prisoners, then back at Jake. Something was changing in her mind, like ice cracking under pressure. "Your way saved more lives," she said slowly. "My way always tries to save more lives, even enemy lives, especially enemy lives. Today's enemy might be tomorrow's friend if you give them the chance." Zexthera removed her battle helmet. Her scarred face looked tired and old. For the first time since Jake had met her, she looked less like a monster and more like a person carrying a heavy burden. "I do not understand this way of thinking," she admitted. "Then let me teach you," Jake said quietly. The words hung in the air between them. Around the arena, warriors and prisoners alike waited to see what would happen next. The arena had been cleared of warriors. Only Jake, Zexthera, and a few guards remained in the vast space. The Vorthok commander sat on the metal floor, her massive form hunched forward, when she had removed all her armor and weapons. For the first time, she looked almost vulnerable. "Explain to me how you think," she said. Her voice was quieter now, less threatening. "Your victory in the simulation should be impossible. Vorthok had been taking that test for 300 years. None have ever won." Jake sat down across from her. Even sitting, she was taller than he was standing, but somehow the size difference mattered less now. "You design your tests to measure courage in the face of death," Jake said. "We design our strategies to avoid death altogether. But death is inevitable. All warriors must face it. Death is inevitable, but it does not have to be meaningless. When someone dies to protect others, that death has meaning. When someone dies just to prove they are brave, that death is wasted." Zexthera's yellow eyes studied Jake's face. "Tell me about human warriors. How do they fight?" Jake thought carefully. He needed to choose examples that would make sense too. Her alien mind. "There was a man named Danny Roberts. He was a firefighter in my city. When a building caught fire, he went inside to save trapped children. The building collapsed and killed him, but he saved 12 kids. He died in battle. That is honorable. He died to save others. That is the difference. He did not fight the fire to prove he was brave. He fought it to protect innocent people." Zexthera was quiet for a long moment. "Your warriors fight to protect. The weak our best warriors do." "There was a doctor named Helen Kim. She spent her whole life treating sick people in places where no one else would go. She could have been rich and safe, but she chose to help the poor instead. A doctor is not a warrior. She fought disease and death every day. She saved thousands of lives over 40 years. When she finally died, people from all over the world came to honor her memory. They honored her for healing, not for killing. They honored her for caring about strangers, for making their lives better instead of worse." Zexthara stood up and began pacing. Her claws clicked against the metal floor. "This makes no sense. The strong should rule the weak. That is the natural order. The strong should protect the weak, as what makes them truly strong. How can protecting weakness make anyone stronger?" Jake pointed up toward the viewing area where the colonists waited. "Those people came to a dangerous world to grow food, not to conquer it, but to make it bloom. They turned empty rock into farms. They built homes for their families. They created something from nothing. Creation is not strength. Creation is the hardest kind of strength anyone can destroy." "Look around this ship!" "Your weapons can turn planets into dust. But can you make a planet green? Can you turn a desert into a garden?" Zexthera stopped pacing. "We take what we need. What happens when there is nothing left to take?" The question hung in the air. It was the same one Jake had asked before. But now, it seemed to hit her differently. "We move to new worlds," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "And then? How many worlds are there, Zexthera? How many species can you conquer before you run out of enemies? What happens to the great Vorthok Empire when there's nothing left to destroy?" For the first time since Jake had met her, Zexthera looked uncertain. We have always found new enemies. Because you made them enemies. Every world you attacked, every species you enslaved, they all became your enemies because you gave them no choice." Jake stood up and walked closer to her. "What if you had landed on their worlds as friends instead of conquerors? What if you had offered to trade instead of demanding surrender? Friends." The word sounded strange in her mouth. "Predators do not have friends. Humans do. We have friends among dozens of species. The Centauri teach us about star navigation. The Ryjo colonies share their mining techniques. The people of Wolf 359 grow the best food in known space. You trade with them. We help each other. When the Centauri had a plague, we sent doctors. When our colony ships needed better engines, the Rigel engineers helped us design them. When storms destroyed our crops, Wolf 359 shared their food." Zexthera's eyes widened. "They helped you without payment. They helped us because we had helped them. That is how friendship works. But what if they attack you? What if they try to take your worlds? Why would they? We give them more by being friends than they could ever take by being enemies. Jake could see her struggling with these ideas. Her entire worldview was built on the concept that the universe was divided into predators and prey. The idea that there might be another way to live was shaking her to her core. The colonists on Kepler 44b, Jake continued. They were not there to threaten anyone. They were growing food to trade with other worlds. Their children played in gardens they planted themselves. They built schools and hospitals and libraries. Libraries? Places where they keep knowledge. Stories and science and art. Things they wanted to preserve for future generations. Why preserve such things? Because knowledge makes life better. Art makes life beautiful. Stories teach us about ourselves and help us understand others. Zexthera sat down again, heavily. We destroy such things. We believe they make warriors soft. They make warriors wise. A wise warrior knows when to fight and when to make peace. A wise warrior protects what is worth protecting. What is worth protecting? Jake thought about his sister Lisa, working in the engine room of their little ship. About Amy Price, trusting him to keep her safe. About Ben Carter, who had spent his life building something good. Love, he said simply. Family. Hope. The future. The idea that tomorrow can be better than today. Love, Zexthera. He said the word like it was foreign. What is love? It's caring about someone else more than you care about yourself. It is being willing to sacrifice everything to keep them safe. Like you did for the colonists, like I am doing right now. Zexthera looked at Jake for a long time. You risked your life for strangers, people you had never met, because they needed help, but they could not help you in return. I did not. Help them so they would help me. I helped them because it was right. Right? Because they were innocent, because they were afraid, because no one else was coming to save them. Zexthera's massive form seemed to shrink. I have conquered 17 worlds, she said quietly. I have never saved anyone. You could start now. How? By letting these people go, by choosing to protect instead of destroy, by becoming the kind of leader who builds instead of burns. Other Vorthok would not understand. They would see it as weakness. Then teach them what you learned today. Show them that there is strength in mercy, that there is honor in helping others. Zexthera looked up at the viewing area where her warriors waited alongside the human prisoners. Her people and Jake's people, enemies by tradition, sitting in the same space. I do not know if I can change, she said. I do not know if you can either, Jake admitted. But I know you can try. And trying is the first step toward becoming something better. In the viewing area above, Lisa Murphy watched. Her brother, talking quietly with the alien commander, she could not hear their words, but she could see the change in both of them. Jake looked tired but hopeful. The alien looked confused but curious. Amy Price tugged on Lisa's sleeve. Is Mr. Jake going to save us? The little girl asked. Lisa looked. Down at the arena, where two very different beings were discovering they might not be so different after all. I think, Lisa said quietly, he might be saving all of us. The next morning, all the prisoners were brought to the main cargo bay of the Crimson Fang. Hundreds of Vorthok warriors lined the walls, their weapons ready. The colonists huddled together in the center, fear clear on their faces. Jake's crew stood with them, trying to look brave. Zexthera entered wearing her full ceremonial armor. Gold decorations marked her as Supreme Commander. Behind her walked Krovax and the other senior officers. Their faces showed no emotion, but Jake could sense tension in the air. Humans of Kepler 44b, Zexthera announced, her voice echoing. Through the vast chamber, you have been conquered by the Vorthok Empire. Your world now belongs to us. Some of the colonists began to cry. Others closed their eyes and prayed. Jake felt his heart sink. Had everything he said made no difference? At all? But then Amy Price did something that changed everything. The 10-year-old girl broke away from her parents and walked toward Zexthera. Got it. The Vorthok guards raised their weapons, but the massive commander held up one clawed hand to stop them. Amy stopped a few feet away from Zexthera and looked up at her with wide, innocent eyes. She was so small compared to the alien warrior that she barely reached Zexthera's knee. "Are you sad?" Amy asked in her clear, childish voice. The question caught everyone by surprise. Vorthok warriors looked at each other in confusion. Humans stared in shock. Even Zexthera seemed stunned. "What?" the commander asked. "You look sad, Amy," said matter-of-factly. "My mommy says people get mean when they're really sad inside. Are you sad because you don't have any friends?" The cargo bay fell completely silent. No one had ever spoken to Zexthera this way. No one had ever suggested that the galaxy's most feared predator might be lonely. Zexthera knelt down slowly until she was closer to Amy's eye level. Even kneeling, she was still much larger than the child. "I do not understand your question, small human. Mr. Jake told me about friends yesterday. He said friends help each other and care about each other. Do you have friends?" Zexthera glanced at her warriors. They were followers, not friends. They obeyed her out of fear and respect for her strength. None of them had ever asked if she was sad. "Vorthok, do not have friends," she said quietly. "That sounds lonely," Amy said with genuine sympathy. "Would you like to be my friend?" The offer hung in the air like a physical thing. A child whose home had been attacked and whose people had been captured was offering friendship to their conqueror. Jake watched Zexthera's face and saw something he had never expected to see: their tears. Actual tears running down the alien's scarred cheeks. "You would be my friend," Zexthera whispered, "even after what I have done." "My daddy says everyone deserves a second chance," Amy said. "Even mean people who are just sad inside." Something broke inside Zexthera at that moment. 40 years of conquest. 40 years of believing that strength meant standing alone. 40 years of fear disguised as power. All of it crumbled under the innocent kindness of one small human child. Zexthera's voice cracked. "I do not know how to be a friend." "Easy," Amy said, reaching out to touch the alien's massive hand with her tiny one. "You just care about people and try to help them instead of hurting them." Zexthera stared at the small hand touching hers. In all her years of war, no one had ever touched her without fear. But this child showed no fear at all, only kindness. Jake stepped forward slowly. "Amy is right," he said. "It is easy to be a friend. First, you have to choose to try." Zexthera looked up at Jake, then at all the humans watching her. She saw Ben Carter, the old man she had nearly allowed to be beaten. She saw Elisa Murphy, who looked at her with cautious hope. She saw parents holding their children, people who had come to a distant world just to build better lives. "I have spent my whole life taking things," Zexthera said slowly. "Worlds, resources, slaves. I thought that was strength." She stood up to her full height and looked around at her warriors. Some of them appeared confused. Others looked almost angry at this display of what they saw as weakness. "I was wrong," she announced loudly. "We have been wrong." Kravak stepped forward. "Commander, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that we have confused strength with destruction. We have mistaken fear for respect. We've been powerful, but we have never been strong." She turned back to Amy, who was still standing there with her hand extended. "This child has shown me more courage in 5 minutes than I have shown in 40 years. She offers friendship to someone who attacked her home. She sees sadness where others see only threat. She chooses kindness when she could choose hatred." Zexthera began removing her armor, piece by piece. The golden plates fell to the floor with loud clangs. When she was finished, she stood before them all in simple clothing, looking more like a person and less like a weapon. "Humans," she said, addressing the colonists, "I came here to conquer you. Instead, you have conquered me.
Ow.
You have shown me that there is strength in mercy, honor in protection, and wisdom in building rather than destroying." She looked directly at Jake. "You asked me yesterday what happens when there is nothing left to take. Today, I choose to learn what happens when there is everything to give." Then Zexthera did something that no Vorthok had ever done in their recorded history. She knelt, not the quick genuflection she had made to speak with Amy, but a full, formal kneel of respect. Her knee touched the deck plates as she bowed her head before Jake and the colonists. "I kneel not in defeat," she said clearly, "but in recognition. You possess a strength that we Vorthok have never understood. The strength to protect rather than destroy, strength to hope rather than fear, strength to love rather than hate." The cargo bay erupted. Vorthok warriors shouted in confusion and anger. Some demanded explanations, others called for Krovax to take command. But Krovax was staring at his commander with something like awe. Zexthura stood slowly and faced her people. "I am still your commander," she said firmly, "but I will no longer lead you down a path that ends in emptiness. We will learn new ways. We will discover what it means to build instead of burn." She turned back to Jake. "Human, you offered to. Teach me. I accept. Teach us how to be friends. Teach us how to create instead of destroy. Teach us how to be truly strong." Jake stepped forward and, in a gesture that amazed everyone present, extended his hand to Zexthera. "Friends?" he asked. The massive alien looked at his hand for a moment, then carefully took it in her own clawed grip. "Friends," she agreed. Amy clapped her hands in delight. "See, I told you it was easy." 1 year later, Jake stood in a garden on Kepler 44 to be. The colony had been rebuilt, larger and more beautiful than before. Humans and Vorthok worked together in the fields, sharing knowledge and techniques. Zexthera knelt beside Ben Carter, carefully planting seeds in the rich soil. The old man was teaching her about growing things instead of destroying them. Her claws, once weapons of war, now dug gently in the earth. "The seeds are so small," she said wonderingly. "How do they become such large plants?" "Time and care," Ben said with a smile. "Same as anything else worth growing." Amy ran up to them, her arms full of flowers. "Miss Zex, look what I picked for you." Zexthera accepted the bouquet carefully, her expression soft. "Thank you, little friend. They are beautiful." Jake watched from nearby, his heart full. The galaxy's strongest predator had learned to kneel not in defeat but in humility. And in that humility she had found a strength greater than any weapon. The universe was a little bit brighter, because one child had asked a simple question: "Would you like to be my friend?" Sometimes that was all it took to change everything.